Hi, this is Patrick Vernon from UNC Kenan-Flagler Business School. In this VCIC training video, we'll go over a brief background and overview of the venture capital industry. Before we dive into the industry, let's take a quick look at the judging criteria at a VCIC event. As in other business school case competitions, you'll need to demonstrate to the judges that you understand the underlying business concepts. An added challenge at VCIC is to demonstrate to the judges that you're thinking like a venture capitalist. We'll keep that in mind as we look at how venture capital began and how it's evolved over the last 50 years or so. VCs will be the first to tell you that venture capital is a people business, and I don't think it's possible to talk about the origin of the industry without talking about where the people came from. Venture capital is truly an American enterprise, and thinking like a VC starts with embracing the optimism of all the waves of immigrants who have come to this country. If America attracts a certain kind of individual, California takes it to the next level. The gold rush was the first major migration of Americans to the West Coast, but it wasn't the last. An oil boom in the early 1900s brought more money and people to California, which continues to be one of the top oil-producing states. By the 1920s, the film industry was taking off, again attracting talent and capital. California also benefited immensely from investments in aeronautics and aerospace fueled by world wars, the Cold War, and the space race. By the 1950s, California was a unique petri dish of opportunism and individualism. It was in this environment that venture capital was accidentally born. An amazing group of scientists had been recruited to California to make silicon chips with Nobel laureate and famous jerk William Shockley. 8 of these scientists, who came to be known as the Traitorous Eight, couldn't take it anymore and left en masse to find a new job together. When they couldn't find a corporation to take them all in, they enlisted the services of New York banker Arthur Rock, who ultimately put together a deal with Fairchild Camera to launch Fairchild Semiconductor as a new startup. It was a great success. Several years later, 2 of the Traitorous Eight joined together again with Arthur Rock to start Intel. I'm sharing this brief and admittedly flawed history of venture capital to help you think like a venture capitalist. Venture capitalists create value in a different way than other parts of the economy. In my experience at VCIC events, it is this California-esque worldview that many VCIC teams fail to embrace. Let's take a quick look at how the industry has evolved. Venture capital has seen a lot of change over the last half-century, particularly in the types of ventures that get funded, but also in the size and focus of venture capital firms. It'll be up to your VCIC team to work with local VCs to find out what the current trends are. One trend has been upward. Venture capital has gone through several boom and bust cycles since the 1980s, but the trend is clearly upward. Total funds under management has increased tenfold over the last 30 years. Bonus question, why don't you see the boom-bust cycles here? As we'll discuss in the video about fundraising, VC funds have a 10-year life. That means funds raised in 2001, for example, continued all the way to 2011. Finally, for this training session, let's take a look at some industry statistics. I mentioned above that VC is an American phenomenon, and the numbers bear it out. I would also point out that based on my experience with VCIC global events, the venture capital industries in other countries often look more like what we might call growth equity. It was no accident that I focused on California in our origin story. California continues to make up nearly 60% of the venture capital industry in the United States. Venture capital has a big impact on our economy. Of all the public companies started since 1979, 43% were venture-backed. And for the first time in 2016, all 5 top market cap companies are VC-backed. Despite its big impact, venture capital is a relatively small industry. For example, total funds under management represent only around 1% in banking. This table shows the most active VC funds in the first quarter of 2016. You'll see some familiar logos from previous slides, as well as plenty of California representation. While Silicon Valley is the elephant in the room for venture capital in America, every region has venture capital, and each region has its own culture. Your VCIC team should learn the trends and culture in the region in which you'll be competing. Thus concludes our ridiculously abbreviated overview of the venture capital industry. In the next training video, we'll take an in-depth look at the definition of venture capital.